We use this ugly butane LPG gas for heating and cooking here in Kurdistan. Most houses have two or more of them, and everyone wants to hide them. For this reason, when someone builds a new house, they set aside a space in front yard, and those who don't have a space make something to hide them. My sister asked me to make her one out of wood. I had these two pallets for 2 years, and I kept them outside in the sun and rain, which make them more rough and dirtier. It's a good opportunity to use them. Since I didn't want to cut them, I started by disassembling them, which took me an hour. Wearing gloves is essential when disassembling pallets, because the boards have numerous splits. Additionally, remove all nails before working on them, because they are dirty and rusty. These are all pallet boards, and I am not sure if there will be enough of them for this project. I have to straighten the pallet boards first because they aren't. Since I don't have a jointer, I used this jig on my table saw to straighten one side of each board. I then positioned my fence 8 cm away in order to make the opposite side parallel and straight. Use a push stick for these cuts if your board is less than 20 cm wide. I occasionally witness woodworkers sliding these kinds of boards on a table saw with their hands, which is unsafe. Now it's time to cut the last length. There are so many nail spots and splits on the ends of the pallet boards. To get rid of as many as I could, I used this 1 meter long cardboard for marking the places of the cuts. I used my meter saw to cut one side, and then I used a piece of plywood with double-sided tape as a stop block to cut the other sides in the same length. Now that I have completed the cuts, it is time to sand them. I used 80 grit sandpaper on my orbital sander because the pallet boards are extremely rough. In this video, it is demonstrated how the orbital sander cleans the board and makes the nail spots easier to work on. I only show you one board because I don't want the video to get too long. I sanded the others the same way. I filled the small nail spots and splits with wood putty, which is simple to use and will sand off easily. The colors vary depending on the type of the wood. Additionally, this side of the board was not straight, so I used a hand plane to straighten before applying glue to cover it with another piece. And because these two nail spots were large, I covered them with this piece of wood. I marked the sides with a utility knife, then used a router to remove the majority of it, and finally a chisel to straighten the sides. This way there will be a tiny possibility of gaps, which we can fill with glue and sawdust if there are. I didn't have enough boards, so I wouldn't have wasted my time on this one, which was the worst because it has so many splits and cracks and needed too much work to be usable. Because of the glue, I left them for a day after covering every area before sanding and planed away any leftover and wood putty. Because I didn't have enough boards, I took a while to fix these spots. Don't forget to subscribe my channel and like the video, it helps me a lot. It's time to put the cabinet together, now that all the boards have been prepared. The cabinet will be 1 meter long by 70 centimeters high, and I positioned 5 boards with 2 centimeters space between them to make it 46 centimeters wide. I had this 2x2 for the stretches. I cut 6 pieces to 46 centimeters. Using my table saw, I also straightened the pieces sides. Since the screws will be visible, I created this small jig to mark their locations. After that, I use screws to assemble the cabinet sides. I used a square for the first piece because if you assemble the first piece square to the stretches, the rest will be square too. To improve the appearance and avoid splits, I used countersink bit to drill the screw holes. To make it sturdy, I used 2 screws on each side. In order to create equal spaces between them, I then used these blocks. What you see here are both sides of the cabinets. Here I use screws to assemble the pieces for the top. And this is my daughter who is a fan of Messi and Argentina. I placed the cabinet on my table saw to assemble the bottom and then put the bottom together inside to make it sturdy. Because the bottles are heavy and all of their weight will be on this bottom, I also added a stretch in the middle to make it strong. I simply used 2 boards and assembled them with pocket holes for the back. These 2 boards serve only as a reinforcement because the back will be against the wall. It doesn't need to cover the whole back. I used glue and nails to add these pieces to cover the stretches. This is for the bottom ones and this is for the top ones. After assembling the covers for the stretches, I saw that the sides needed to match the top cover, so I marked the extra material and screwed the first boards and used my table saw to cut them. I have completed the cabinet's body here. The next step is to make 2 doors. I had this board for the doors, but there was a gap on both sides when I placed it in front of the cabinet. I will cut the doors first, and then I will figure out how to fix this. I used a track saw to cut the doors because the board was too large for my table saw. I assembled track first, and then I cut this 10 square side. After cutting the door's length, I cut the board in half so that there are 2 equal pieces for the doors. I used this offcut for the gaps as a solution, cutting 4 equal pieces on my table saw based on the gap and placing 1 on each side of the doors in this exact manner. This is how it will be. I recently purchased this biscuit jointer, so it was a good opportunity to use it for gluing these pieces. I used 4 biscuits for each side. In my opinion, biscuits are more for straightening than for strength. I clamped both doors after that and left them for a day. I purposely left the pieces longer than the doors so that I could use a flash cut saw to flash cut them with the doors. This board had varnish on it, which I removed with my Orbita sander to restore its natural color. It's time to install the hinges now. I used cabinet hinges. Here I marked where my door's hinges would be located. To make the holes for the hinges, I used this Forstner bit on my drill press. I chose drill press because it will create a straight hole and has a stop to prevent go through. Before screwing the hinges into place, I used a square to make sure they were square with the top and bottom of the door. I then positioned my doors on the sides and fastened the other side of the hinges to the cabinet side. I drilled the places of the handles here. I had those black handles that I used on these doors. In order to move and clean underneath the cabinet, I purchased 6 casters for the bottom and screwed them underneath, 2 for each side and 2 for the center. The casters have brakes so they can be locked in place. Due to bottle's weight, I used 6 casters. It's time to finish, so I used this finish. I am not sure what it's called. I bought for my epoxy table. It's a good finish, works well both indoors and out, and it's matte. I apply 3 coats with sanding in between using a roller and a brush. Making this cabinet took longer than I had anticipated because I used pallet boards. But I am pleased with the outcome. I only used materials I already had with the exception of the casters. Thanks for staying till the end. I hope you liked the video.